The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base as Commander Sarah Mitchell walked toward what everyone called the impossible assignment. For 3 years, no officer had lasted more than 6 months at Gate 7, the most challenging security checkpoint in the entire facility. The gate that had broken careers, shattered reputations, and left even the most seasoned officers questioning their abilities.
But Sarah wasn't just any officer. She was about to discover that sometimes the most forgotten corners hold the greatest opportunities for those brave enough to stand tall.
Sarah Mitchell had always believed that respect was earned, not given. As she approached the weathered security booth at Gate 7 on her first morning, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that had gotten her through 12 years of naval service. The early morning mist hung low over the base, and the sound of her polished boots echoed against the concrete walkway. Gate 7 sat at the far eastern edge of Naval Base Coronado, a lonely outpost that most personnel avoided unless absolutely necessary. It was the gateway to the training facilities where Navy SEALs pushed their limits, where classified exercises took place, and where careers were made or broken. The gate itself looked unremarkable, a simple checkpoint with a small booth, electronic scanners, and reinforced barriers. But everyone on base knew its reputation. The previous gate officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez, had requested a transfer after just 4 months. Before him, it was Lieutenant Commander Hayes who lasted 6 months before citing operational difficulties in his transfer request. The position had become known as the graveyard of naval careers, a place where promising officers went to disappear into obscurity. Sarah adjusted her uniform cap as she read through the morning briefings. The statistics were sobering. Gate 7 had the highest number of security incidents, the most complaints from personnel, and the lowest efficiency ratings of any checkpoint on base. The problems ranged from equipment failures to personnel conflicts, from security breaches to administrative nightmares that seemed to pile up like storm clouds. Her supervisor, Captain Henderson, had been brutally honest during their meeting the previous week. "Mitchell, I won't sugarcoat this. Gate 7 is where we send officers who need to prove themselves or where careers go to die. The choice of which one it becomes is entirely up to you." As Sarah settled into the security booth that first morning, she began to understand why her predecessors had struggled. The communication systems were outdated, constantly crackling with static that made radio transmissions nearly unintelligible. The computer terminals were relics from a previous decade, running on software that crashed at least twice per shift. The backup generators hadn't been properly maintained in months, leaving the entire checkpoint vulnerable during power outages. But it wasn't just the equipment that posed challenges. The personnel who passed through Gate 7 were unlike those at any other checkpoint. This was the entrance to the SEAL training compound, and the men and women who came through were either aspiring to join the most elite fighting force in the world or were already members of that exclusive brotherhood. They carried themselves differently, spoke in shorthand that civilians couldn't understand, and had little patience for bureaucratic delays. During her first week, Sarah encountered every type of challenge imaginable. On Tuesday, a convoy of training vehicles arrived with paperwork that didn't match their cargo manifest. The discrepancy should have been a simple matter of verification, but the antiquated computer system couldn't access the updated databases. While Sarah worked to resolve the issue manually, the convoy backed up for nearly a quarter mile, with increasingly frustrated drivers honking their horns and shouting demands for faster service. Wednesday brought a security alert when the metal detectors malfunctioned during a shift change. Protocol required that all personnel be manually screened, but with only one functional handheld scanner and a line of 50 people waiting to enter the compound, tensions ran high. Several SEAL candidates, already pushed to their physical and mental limits by their training, became confrontational when told they would have to wait an additional 30 minutes. Thursday's challenge came in the form of a surprise inspection by the base security chief, who arrived unannounced to audit Gate 7's procedures. Sarah had spent her off-duty hours the previous evening studying every regulation and protocol manual she could find, but the inspection revealed gaps in training records, missing maintenance logs, and a filing system that hadn't been updated in over a year. The security chief's report was scathing, noting that Gate 7 represented a significant vulnerability in the base's overall security posture. By Friday of her first week, Sarah understood why her predecessors had requested transfers. The job seemed impossible not because of any single overwhelming challenge, but because of the constant accumulation of small failures that combined to create an atmosphere of perpetual crisis. Every day brought new problems, and there never seemed to be enough time, resources, or support to address them properly. That evening, as Sarah sat in her small apartment off base, she spread out maintenance manuals, security protocols, and personnel files across her kitchen table. Her dinner grew cold as she studied the patterns behind the failures at Gate 7. She began to see connections that previous officers might have missed. How the outdated communication systems contributed to coordination failures, how the inadequate maintenance schedule led to equipment breakdowns at the worst possible moments, and how the lack of proper training for gate personnel created bottlenecks during peak traffic periods. But Sarah also saw something else in those files and reports. She saw opportunity. Gate 7 wasn't just a problem to be endured, it was a challenge to be conquered. Every failure represented a chance to implement a solution. Every complaint was feedback that could guide improvements. Every frustrated service member who passed through her checkpoint was someone whose experience she could make better. The breakthrough came during her second week when she discovered that the base had allocated a small discretionary budget for gate improvements that had gone unused for 3 years. Previous officers had been so overwhelmed by daily crises that none had thought to investigate what resources might be available. Sarah spent her lunch break in the base procurement office, working with a helpful clerk to identify exactly what equipment, upgrades, and maintenance services could be funded within existing budgets. She also began to build relationships with the personnel who passed through her gate regularly. Instead of viewing each interaction as a potential conflict, she approached every person as an opportunity to understand their needs better. She learned the names of the training instructors, memorized the schedules of regular convoys, and began to anticipate the daily rhythms of the compound beyond her checkpoint. The SEAL trainees presented a particular challenge. These were individuals who had volunteered for the most demanding military training program in the world. They were pushed to their limits physically and mentally every single day. And by the time they reached her gate at the end of their training sessions, many were exhausted, frustrated, and in no mood for additional delays or complications. Sarah realized that these warriors in training needed efficiency and respect, not bureaucratic obstacles. She began studying their training schedules, learning when different groups would be returning from exercises, so she could have their paperwork pre-processed and their access cards ready. She memorized faces and names, greeting each trainee personally rather than treating them as anonymous personnel passing through a checkpoint. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but by the end of her third week, Sarah began to notice changes. Equipment failures decreased as she implemented a rigorous daily maintenance routine. Processing times improved as she streamlined paperwork procedures and eliminated redundant verification steps. Personnel complaints dropped as word spread that Gate 7 finally had an officer who treated everyone with professionalism and efficiency. More importantly, Sarah began to understand the unique culture of the SEAL community. These were individuals who valued competence above all else, who respected those who could perform under pressure, and who had little tolerance for excuses or mediocrity. They didn't need friendly small talk or casual conversation. They needed someone who could do their job exceptionally well, someone who wouldn't slow them down or create unnecessary obstacles. Sarah threw herself into becoming that person. She studied every regulation, mastered every procedure, and learned every shortcut that could expedite legitimate traffic through her checkpoint. She arrived early every morning to ensure all systems were operational, and stayed late every evening to complete paperwork and prepare for the next day. She treated her assignment not as punishment or an impossible task, but as an opportunity to prove that excellence was possible, even in the most challenging circumstances. The real test came during her fourth week, when a major training exercise brought unusual activity to the compound. Multiple SEAL teams were conducting joint operations, which meant increased security requirements, additional personnel screenings, and coordination with off-base agencies. Previous officers had struggled with such exercises, often requiring additional staff and extended processing times that disrupted training schedules. Sarah had spent weeks preparing for exactly this type of scenario. She had memorized the protocols for joint exercises, established communication procedures with all relevant agencies, and created a processing system that could handle high volumes of personnel without compromising security standards. When the exercise began, her checkpoint operated more smoothly than anyone expected. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah's reputation began to change. Personnel who had dreaded the delays and frustrations at Gate 7 found themselves pleasantly surprised by the efficiency and professionalism they encountered. Training instructors began to rely on her checkpoint running on schedule, knowing that their carefully planned exercises wouldn't be disrupted by gate delays. The SEAL community, known for its strict standards and reluctance to accept outsiders, began to take notice of the young commander who had transformed their problematic checkpoint. These were individuals who spent their careers evaluating performance under pressure, who could instantly recognize competence and dedication. Sarah's quiet professionalism and unwavering reliability earned something that couldn't be requested or demanded: their respect. But Sarah's journey was far from over. The successful operation of Gate 7 was just the beginning. She had proven that the supposedly impossible assignment could be mastered through dedication, intelligence, and hard work. However, the real challenges lay ahead, as her growing reputation would soon bring opportunities and responsibilities she had never imagined. As her 6th month at Gate 7 approached, the point at which most of her predecessors had already requested transfers, Sarah Mitchell stood at her post each morning with growing confidence. She had taken an assignment that others viewed as career suicide and turned it into a foundation for something greater. The gate that had broken so many careers before hers was becoming the launching point for achievements she was only beginning to imagine. The morning mist still hung over the base, and the sound of her boots still echoed against the concrete. But everything else had changed. Gate 7 was no longer a graveyard for naval careers. Under Sarah's command, it had become a symbol of what was possible when someone refused to accept that a job was impossible and instead chose to make it exceptional.
Sarah's transformation of Gate 7 had not gone unnoticed by the upper echelons of command. Captain Henderson, who had initially assigned her to the position with mixed expectations, found himself fielding unusual inquiries about the previously problematic checkpoint.
For the first time in years, Gate 7 was generating positive attention rather than complaints and incident reports. The change became undeniable during the base's quarterly security assessment. The inspection team, expecting to find the usual litany of problems at Gate 7, instead discovered a model operation that exceeded standards in every measurable category. Processing times had improved by 40%, security incidents had dropped to 0, and personnel satisfaction ratings had reached levels not seen at any checkpoint on the base. Sarah's methods had evolved beyond simple efficiency improvements. She had developed an innovative approach to security screening that maintained the highest safety standards while respecting the unique demands placed on SEAL personnel. Understanding that these elite warriors often return from training exercises exhausted and pushed to their limits, she created a system that expedited their passage without compromising security protocols. The breakthrough innovation was her implementation of biometric pre-screening for regular personnel. Working within existing budgets and regulations, Sarah had negotiated with the base technology department to install updated fingerprint and retinal scanners that could verify identity in seconds rather than minutes. For SEAL trainees and instructors who passed through her checkpoint multiple times daily, this meant eliminating redundant paperwork and reducing wait times to virtually 0. But technology was only part of Sarah's success. The real transformation came from her understanding of the SEAL community's culture and her ability to adapt her approach accordingly. She recognized that these individuals operated in an environment where every second could mean the difference between mission success and failure, where precision and reliability were matters of life and death. Sarah began arriving at her post an hour earlier each morning, using the additional time to review training schedules, coordinate with compound personnel, and ensure that her checkpoint would never be the weak link in their operational chain. She studied the training curriculum, learning about the different phases of SEAL preparation so she could anticipate the needs of personnel at various stages of their development. Her dedication extended beyond normal duty hours. Sarah volunteered for weekend shifts when other officers were unavailable, ensuring continuity of service that prevented the disruptions that had plagued Gate 7 in the past. She attended base security meetings on her own time, staying current with evolving protocols and contributing insights gained from her unique position at the interface between the general base population and the specialized SEAL community. The SEAL instructors were the first to truly appreciate Sarah's efforts. These experienced warriors, who had served in combat zones around the world, recognized dedication when they saw it. Master Chief Petty Officer James Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran who supervised advanced training phases, was initially skeptical of yet another gate officer who would likely transfer out within months. Rodriguez's opinion changed during a critical training exercise when equipment failure at another base checkpoint delayed the arrival of essential supplies. Sarah, monitoring communications from her post, identified the problem and worked with base logistics to reroute the supplies through Gate 7. Her quick thinking and proactive communication prevented a delay that could have compromised the entire exercise. Word of such incidents spread through the tight-knit SEAL community. These were individuals who valued competence above rank, who respected results over rhetoric. Sarah's consistent performance began to earn her something that couldn't be ordered or demanded: the genuine respect of the people she served. The respect was evident in small but significant ways. SEAL candidates who had previously approached Gate 7 with resignation now arrived expecting efficient service. Training instructors began including Sarah in their informal communication networks, providing her with advance notice of schedule changes or special requirements. Even the base commander's office began routing VIP visitors through Gate 7,
knowing that Sarah's checkpoint would provide a professional first impression. Sarah's growing reputation brought new challenges and opportunities. The base public affairs office asked her to give tours to visiting dignitaries who wanted to see the model security checkpoint. Military journalists requested interviews about her innovative approaches to security management. Professional military education institutions invited her to speak about leadership and problem-solving in challenging assignments. But perhaps the most significant recognition came from an unexpected source. Commander Michael Stevens, a decorated SEAL officer who served as liaison between the training compound and base administration, had been quietly observing Sarah's work for months. Stevens, whose recommendations carried significant weight throughout the Naval Special Operations community, began speaking positively about the young officer who had transformed Gate 7. Stevens understood better than most the importance of reliable support personnel in special operations. He had seen missions fail because of small logistical oversights, had witnessed the impact of unreliable support staff on operational readiness. Sarah's consistent excellence represented exactly the type of support professional that the SEAL community needed, but rarely found. The pivotal moment came during a large-scale joint training exercise involving multiple SEAL teams, Marine Force reconnaissance units, and Allied Special Forces personnel. The exercise, codenamed Trident Thunder, was designed to test interoperability between different elite units and required complex coordination of personnel, equipment, and security protocols. Previous joint exercises had been logistical nightmares for Gate 7, with confused foreign personnel, incompatible identification systems, and security protocols that differed between services and nations. The last such exercise had resulted in hours-long delays, frustrated participants, and a critical incident report that reflected poorly on base security procedures. Sarah had spent weeks preparing for Trident Thunder, studying the security requirements for each participating unit, coordinating with base intelligence officers to understand clearance levels for foreign personnel, and developing streamlined procedures that could handle the complex mix of participants without compromising security standards. On the first morning of the exercise, Sarah's checkpoint processed over 300 personnel from 6 different nations and multiple service branches without a single significant delay. Foreign officers who spoke limited English found pre-printed instruction cards in their native languages. Equipment that didn't match standard protocols was processed through expedited verification procedures that Sarah had established with base security. Personnel with unusual clearance levels were handled through direct communication channels that Sarah had established with exercise controllers. The smooth operation of Gate 7 during Trident Thunder attracted attention from the highest levels of command. Admiral Patricia Walsh, who served as overall exercise commander, made an unscheduled visit to Sarah's checkpoint on the second day of the exercise. The Admiral, known for her demanding standards and direct communication style, spent 30 minutes observing Sarah's operation and asking detailed questions about her procedures. Admiral Walsh's assessment was recorded in the official exercise report. Gate 7 represents the gold standard for checkpoint operations. Commander Mitchell's innovative approaches to security screening and personnel processing have eliminated traditional bottlenecks while maintaining the highest security standards. Her checkpoint's performance during Trident Thunder was exemplary and should serve as a model for similar operations throughout the fleet. The Admiral's commendation was more than just recognition. It was validation that Sarah's approach represented something genuinely innovative in military security procedures. But for Sarah, the most meaningful recognition came from a different source entirely. Master Chief Rodriguez, who had initially been skeptical of Sarah's assignment, approached her checkpoint on the final day of Trident Thunder. The grizzled veteran, whose approval was notoriously difficult to earn, stood at attention in front of Sarah's desk and delivered a comment that would become legendary within the SEAL community. "Commander Mitchell," Rodriguez said in his gravelly voice, "in 20 years of training the best warriors in the world, I've learned to recognize excellence when I see it. What you've done here isn't just good gate management, it's leadership. You've taken an impossible assignment and made it look easy. More importantly, you've made everyone who passes through your checkpoint better at their jobs." Rodriguez paused, glancing around the checkpoint that had once been considered the worst assignment on base. "I've served with SEALs in combat zones where split-second decisions meant life or death. The attention to detail, the preparation, the absolute reliability that you demonstrate here every day, that's the same standard we hold ourselves to in the teams. You may not wear the trident, but you've earned our respect." The Master Chief's words carried weight throughout the special operations community. For Sarah, they represented acknowledgement that her work had transcended simple administrative duty and had become something more significant, a contribution to the operational readiness of the nation's most elite warriors. But Sarah's story was entering a new phase. Her success at Gate 7 had proven that she could excel in a challenging assignment,
but it had also attracted attention that would soon lead to opportunities beyond anything she had previously imagined. The skills she had developed, the relationships she had built, and the reputation she had earned were about to open doors that she had never thought possible. As the Trident Thunder exercise concluded and the participating units departed, Sarah found herself in an unexpected position. She was no longer the officer assigned to the impossible job. She was the officer who had made the impossible look routine. The transformation of Gate 7 from problematic checkpoint to model operation had established her as someone who could succeed where others had failed. The base commander's office had begun including her in planning discussions for major events. The security department sought her input on checkpoint procedures throughout the base. Professional military education institutions requested her expertise for courses on leadership and innovative problem-solving. More significantly, Sarah had begun receiving informal inquiries about her career plans from senior officers, whose opinions carried considerable weight in assignment decisions. These conversations were preliminary, exploratory, but they suggested that her success at Gate 7 had identified her as someone ready for greater responsibilities and more challenging assignments. Sarah continued to approach each day at Gate 7 with the same dedication and professionalism that had transformed the position, but she was increasingly aware that her time at the checkpoint was becoming a foundation for something larger. The impossible assignment had become a launching pad for opportunities she was only beginning to understand. The morning mist still hung over the base each day as Sarah walked to her post, but the sounds and sights around Gate 7 had changed completely. Where once there had been frustration and delay, there was now efficiency and professionalism. Where once there had been complaints and problems, there was now commendation and praise. Sarah Mitchell had proven that excellence was possible even in the most challenging circumstances. Now she was about to discover what happened when that excellence attracted the attention of those who made decisions about the most important assignments in the military. Her journey was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. The summons to Admiral Walsh's office came on a Tuesday morning in late spring, nearly 8 months after Sarah had first taken command of Gate 7. The message was brief and formal, requesting her presence at 1400 hours, for what was described only as a discussion regarding your professional development. Sarah had received similar summons before, routine performance reviews, administrative updates, or briefings on new security protocols, but something about this particular invitation felt different. Admiral Walsh was not someone who conducted routine meetings with junior officers, and the timing seemed significant given the recent attention her work had attracted from senior leadership. As Sarah prepared for the meeting, she reflected on how dramatically her circumstances had changed. 8 months ago, she had approached Gate 7 as an assignment that could either make or break her career. Today, she walked toward the Admiral's office as an officer whose innovative work had become a model for military installations throughout the fleet. The transformation had continued well beyond the success of Exercise Trident Thunder. Sarah's checkpoint procedures had been studied by security experts from multiple branches of the military. Her integration of biometric technology with traditional security protocols had been implemented at 3 other naval installations. Her approach to managing high-volume traffic while maintaining strict security standards had been included in the curriculum at the Naval War College, but the most significant change had been in Sarah's relationship with the SEAL community itself. What had begun as professional respect had evolved into something deeper, genuine acceptance by individuals who rarely extended their trust to those outside their elite fraternity. The evidence of this acceptance was visible in countless small interactions. SEAL trainees who completed their programs made special trips to Gate 7 to thank Sarah personally before departing for their first operational assignments. Training instructors included her in informal gatherings that were typically reserved for members of the Special Operations community. Even visiting SEAL teams from other bases specifically requested routing through Gate 7, having heard about the exceptional officer who managed the checkpoint. Perhaps most significantly, Sarah had been invited to observe portions of SEAL training that were normally restricted to essential personnel only. Commander Stevens had arranged for her to witness Hell Week exercises, explaining that her understanding of the training process would help her better support the candidates who passed through her checkpoint. Watching those grueling exercises had given Sarah new appreciation for the individuals she served daily. She saw young men and women pushed beyond what seemed humanly possible, witnessed the forging of warriors who would serve in the most dangerous assignments around the world. The experience deepened her commitment to ensuring that her checkpoint never added unnecessary stress or delay to their already demanding journey. Admiral Walsh's office occupied the top floor of the base headquarters building, with windows that overlooked both the main harbor and the training facilities where Sarah had spent the past months. The Admiral herself was a legend in naval aviation. one of the first women to command a carrier strike group and someone whose opinions carried significant weight throughout the Navy. "Commander Mitchell," the Admiral began as Sarah entered the office, "please have a seat. I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time." Sarah settled into the chair across from the Admiral's desk, maintaining the professional bearing that had become second nature during her months at Gate 7. She had learned to project confidence even when facing unknown situations, a skill that had served her well when dealing with everything from equipment failures to VIP visits. "I've been reviewing your performance records," Admiral Walsh continued, opening a thick folder that contained what appeared to be months of documentation. 8 months ago, you were assigned to what many considered the most challenging duty station on this base. Your predecessors struggled with that assignment, and frankly, we weren't certain what to expect from you either. The Admiral paused, reviewing several pages of reports before continuing. "What you've accomplished at Gate 7 goes well beyond simply doing your job competently. You've transformed a problematic position into a model operation that other installations are studying and implementing. You've earned the respect of the SEAL community, which, as I'm sure you know, is not easily given." Sarah listened carefully, aware that this conversation was heading somewhere significant but uncertain about the destination. Admiral Walsh had a reputation for directness, but she was building towards something important rather than simply delivering routine praise. "Commander Stevens has submitted a detailed report about your work," the Admiral continued. "His assessment is remarkable, particularly coming from someone who rarely expresses enthusiasm about support personnel. He describes your performance as transformational and suggests that your skills would be valuable in assignments well beyond checkpoint management." The Admiral closed the folder and leaned back in her chair, studying Sarah with the calculating gaze of someone who had spent decades evaluating personnel for critical assignments. "That assessment raises an interesting question, Commander Mitchell. What do you see as the next step in your career?" Sarah had been thinking about this question for weeks, ever since it became clear that her success at Gate 7 had attracted attention from senior leadership. She had several potential answers prepared, but sitting across from Admiral Walsh, she decided to respond with complete honesty. "Admiral, when I was first assigned to Gate 7, my goal was simply to prove that the position could be managed successfully. I wanted to demonstrate that with proper attention and innovative approaches, any assignment could be executed at the highest standards. That goal expanded as I began to understand the unique requirements of supporting the SEAL community." Sarah paused, organizing her thoughts before continuing. "What I've learned over the past 8 months is that support roles are just as critical as operational roles in maintaining military effectiveness. My work at Gate 7 has shown me that there are opportunities throughout the military to improve efficiency, enhance security, and better support our most elite personnel. I'd like to continue finding and addressing those opportunities, wherever that might lead." Admiral Walsh nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the answer I was hoping to hear, Commander. Your experience at Gate 7 has demonstrated skills that are desperately needed in other areas of our operations. You've shown the ability to analyze complex problems, implement innovative solutions, and earn the trust of demanding personnel. Those skills are rare, and they're needed in assignments that go well beyond base security." The Admiral stood and walked to the window overlooking the harbor, where several naval vessels were visible at their moorings. "Commander Mitchell, I'm offering you an assignment that will challenge everything you've learned and require you to apply your skills on a much larger scale. The position involves liaison work between special operations units and conventional forces, with responsibilities that span multiple installations and overseas deployments." Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she began to understand the magnitude of what was being offered. Liaison positions with special operations units were among the most prestigious assignments available to officers outside the special operations community itself. They required exceptional performance records, unquestionable security clearances, and proven ability to work effectively with elite personnel. The position would require you to coordinate support for SEAL operations across multiple theaters, Admiral Walsh continued. You would be responsible for ensuring that special operations units receive the logistical, administrative, and security support they need to maintain operational readiness. Based on your work at Gate 7, Commander Stevens believes you have the skills and temperament to excel in this role. The Admiral returned to her desk and retrieved another folder, this one marked with the security classifications that indicated highly sensitive material. This assignment would also put you in line for accelerated promotion and eventual command positions within the Special Operations Support structure. It's the type of career track that leads to significant responsibilities and the opportunity to impact military effectiveness at the highest levels. Sarah listened with growing excitement and apprehension. The opportunity being described was beyond anything she had imagined when she first walked toward Gate 7 8 months earlier. It represented validation that her innovative work had been noticed at the highest levels of command, and that her skills were considered valuable enough to merit assignment to critical positions. However, Admiral Walsh continued, "I want you to understand exactly what this assignment would entail. You would be working directly with SEAL teams in operational environments, including overseas deployments where conditions can be challenging and dangerous. The work would require absolute discretion, unquestioning reliability, and the ability to perform under pressure that makes Gate 7 look routine." The Admiral leaned forward, her expression serious. "The SEAL community is considering recommending you for this assignment based on your performance over the past 8 months. But they need to know that you're fully committed to this path. This isn't just another tour of duty. It's a career decision that would align you permanently with Special Operations support." Sarah realized that this moment represented the culmination of everything she had worked towards since arriving at Gate 7. The impossible assignment had indeed become the foundation for opportunities she had never imagined. Her dedication, innovation, and commitment to excellence had earned her consideration for positions that most officers could only dream about. "Admiral," Sarah responded, "8 months ago, I approached Gate 7 as a challenge to be overcome. Today, I understand that it was actually preparation for something much more significant. Working with the SEAL community has shown me the importance of absolute reliability, innovative problem-solving, and unwavering commitment to excellence. If my skills can contribute to the effectiveness of our most elite warriors, then that's exactly where I want to be." Admiral Walsh smiled for the first time during their conversation. "Commander Mitchell, that's the answer I expected from the officer who transformed Gate 7. I'll be forwarding my recommendation to the Special Operations Command immediately. You should expect to receive official orders within the next 2 weeks." As Sarah left Admiral Walsh's office, she walked past Gate 7 one final time during her shift. The checkpoint was operating with the smooth efficiency that had become its trademark, processing personnel with the professionalism and attention to detail that she had worked so hard to establish. Her replacement would inherit a model operation and the respect of the SEAL community, a legacy that would continue long after her departure. But for Sarah, Gate 7 had always been a beginning rather than a destination. The impossible assignment had taught her that excellence was possible in any circumstance, that innovation could transform even the most challenging positions, and that dedication to serving others could open doors to opportunities beyond imagination. Standing at the gate that had once been considered career suicide, Sarah Mitchell reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had arrived as an officer assigned to prove herself in a difficult position. She was departing as someone whose skills had been recognized by the highest levels of command, and whose future held possibilities that extended far beyond anything she had originally envisioned. The morning mist would continue to hang over the base, and the sound of boots would continue to echo against the concrete walkways, but Gate 7 was no longer the graveyard of naval careers. Under Sarah's leadership, it had become a symbol of what was possible when someone refused to accept that any assignment was impossible and instead chose to pursue excellence regardless of circumstances. As Sarah walked toward her next assignment, she carried with her the lessons learned during 8 months of transforming the impossible into the exemplary. The young officer who had approached Gate 7 with determination had become a leader whose skills were valued by the most elite warriors in the military. Her story was proof that sometimes the most unexpected assignments lead to the greatest opportunities for those brave enough to stand tall and pursue excellence without compromise. Assigned only to the gate, she stood tall as a SEAL commander saluted her first.